You know how sometimes you just want to cut through all the noise and really get to the heart of a complex story?
Hmm.
Well, that's exactly what we're aiming for today. We are taking a deep dive into something really chilling, the Colonial Parkway murders. These were unsolved cases that cast this really dark shadow over Virginia. What was it, 86 to 89?
That's right, 1986 to 1989. And it's a case that honestly still fascinates and saddens people today.
Hmm.
We've pulled together quite a bit of material here, news reports from the time, bits from a true crime book, a pretty recent podcast update, actually, some online discussions from a Reddit group that's, really focused on it, and the Wikipedia page, which gives a good overview.
Okay.
Our goal here really is to try and weave all that together for you, pull out the most crucial bits, the key connections, without drowning you in every single tiny detail. We want to get a real sense of these tragedies and, importantly, what these recent developments actually mean.
Okay, so let's start where it all began, really. The discovery that kind of kicked this off into the public eye. Kathleen Thomas and Rebecca Darsky. They were found October 12th, 1986. Last seen leaving a computer lab a few days before. What really jumps out from those initial reports, the crime scene stuff?
Well, what's immediately striking and kind of sets the tone is how it wasn't just a simple robbery gone wrong. Their bodies were found inside Thomas's car, which was way down an embankment just off the Colonial Parkway itself.
Right.
The car's back window was smashed in, and weirdly, diesel fuel had been poured all over it. Not set alight, just poured.
Diesel fuel.
Yeah. And the autopsy, well, it was brutal. Rope burns on their necks, their wrists. They'd been strangled and their throats were slashed. Just horrific violence. And there was a clump of hair found clutched in Thomas's fingers, which, points pretty clearly to a struggle.
A desperate struggle, sounds like.
Absolutely. And the key thing, their purses, still there. Money, jewelry, all untouched.
Yeah.
So that really steers you away from robbery as a motive, doesn't it? It hints at something more personal, maybe predatory. It's a pattern that kind of echoes later.
And didn't the FBI, really early on suggest the killer might be someone in law enforcement? That seems like a huge leap to make so quickly.
It really does. But yeah, according to one of the victim's brothers, that idea was floated within just days, which, immediately throws this whole other layer onto it. Potential suspicion makes the investigation itself way more complicated.
Sure.
And beyond that, there were other clues. A piece of nautical line, like rope, found in Thomas's hair. That's interesting. Combine that with the diesel fuel. Well, it strongly suggested maybe someone connected to the water. A fisherman, someone with access to bulk diesel, maybe.
Okay.
Also, the driver's seat was pushed back, adjusted for someone taller than Thomas. So the implication is the killer probably drove the car at some point.
Oh.
And crucially, there was hardly any blood inside the car itself, which suggests the actual murders, the worst of it, probably happened somewhere else.
Somewhere else, and then they moved the car. Okay. So fast forward about a year, September 87. David Knobling and Robin Edwards at Ragged Island. Now, that wasn't actually on the parkway, right? That's a key difference.
It is, yeah. An important distinction. Knobling and Edwards, they were last seen September 19th. They'd met up. Knobling's pickup truck was found a couple of days later, parked at the Ragged Island Wildlife Refuge. And the scene there had a whole different set of disturbing clues.
Like what?
Well, the keys were in the ignition, turned to the accessory position so the radio was on. The windshield wipers were going, doors were open, driver's window partly down.
That's specific.
It is. And Knobling's wallet was still inside the truck, but Edwards' wallet was gone. Now, these little details, the radio, the wipers, they kind of paint this picture of an interruption, right? Like they were stopped suddenly. Maybe by someone pretending to have authority.
Yeah, it almost gives you that feeling of being pulled over, doesn't it? Like flashing lights, stop the car kind of thing.
Precisely. That's the theory many people lean towards. Then, their bodies were found, but way down on the Ragged Island shoreline, like a mile from the truck.
A mile?
Yeah. Both shot, back of the head, close range. It led to this really grim idea that they were basically marched down there. And there was evidence Knobling might have struggled or tried to run. He was actually shot twice, once in the shoulder, then the fatal shot to the head.
Oh.
And Ragged Island, locally it had this reputation, a bit of a lover's lane, which unfortunately just means secluded.
The vulnerable.
Right, easy target. And adding to the frustration, there were issues early on, reports about delays in processing Knobling's truck for evidence, some alleged mix-up with fingerprint film, things that just raised questions about how tight the initial investigation was.
Not ideal.
Yeah.
Okay, then we jump to April 88. Cassandra Haley and Keith Call. They disappear after a college party. This one is especially awful because, well, they've never been found.
Yeah, their disappearance really ratcheted up the fear in the area. Keith Call's car, found the next day, back on the Colonial Parkway, and near where Thomas Endowski's car was found, actually.
Really close.
Yeah.
God.
But again, just weird, unsettling details. The car wasn't parked on the route. Call likely would have taken home. The driver's seat was pushed way forward, which was strange for Cole's height.
Yeah.
And the mud on the tires didn't seem to match the dirt right there where the car was parked. Even something as small as a single beer can found sitting upright on the floorboard. Some people interpret that as another sign, like they were stopped unexpectedly and put it down quickly.
Just adds to the mystery.
Totally. And their families, they've said both Cassandra and Keith were actually kind of scared of the parkway, especially at night, how dark and isolated it was. It just seems really unlikely they would have just pulled over there voluntarily to hang out.
No.
So given everything else that had happened, tragically, the assumption has always been that they were victims too, presumed murdered.
Right. And the final pair in this sort of time frame, Anna Maria Phelps and Daniel Lauer, September 1989. Their case has some really peculiar things going on, too.
Very peculiar. They vanished September 5th, 89. They were heading to Virginia Beach. But Daniel Lauer's car was found at a rest stop on I-64, going westbound, the opposite direction.
Opposite direction. Okay, that's weird.
Yeah. Keys in the ignition again, doors unlocked, dirt and grass stains underneath, suggesting maybe he went off-road slightly. Phelps' post was inside, so initially it didn't look like a robbery, but later it turned out their wallets were missing.
Okay, so robbery wasn't totally off the table.
Right, it complicates things.
Yeah.
Their bodies, skeletonized by then, were found about 6 weeks later, not far from that rest stop, actually hidden under a blanket from Lauer's own car.
Oh, wow.
And another really strange detail, Anna Maria was wearing Daniel's shoes and socks.
Why would that be?
Nobody knows. It's just bizarre. Because of the decomposition, determining the exact cause of death was tough, but there were signs Phelps might have been stabbed.
Right.
One more oddity, a feathered roach clip, you know, the kind people used to hang from rearview mirrors. It was usually on Lauer's mirror, but it was found clipped to the driver's side mirror.
Huh. Moved.
And then much later, a note surfaced, apparently indicating Phelps was supposed to meet someone in a blue van at a rest stop.
Yeah.
Adds a whole other potential layer.
A blue van. Okay. So for years, all these cases, just cold, so much pain for the families. But then January 2024, things shifted. A suspect identified, at least in some of them, Alan Wade Wilmer Sr.
Yes, that was a huge development, a potential breakthrough after decades.
Yeah.
DNA evidence finally pointed to Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. He was a local guy, a fisherman known as Pokey. He actually died back in 2017.
Okay.
And the DNA linked him definitively to the murders of David Knobling and Robin Edwards, the Ragged Island case, and also linked him to another murder from 1989, Teresa Howell. She was found strangled, sexually assaulted outside a nightclub.
So who was this guy? Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. What do we know about him from the sources?
Well, he owned a commercial fishing boat, the Denny Wade. Back in the 80s, his main thing was farming clams and oysters, so very familiar with the local waterways.
Right, the fisherman angle again.
Exactly. He also apparently ran a tree service on the side and was known to be an avid hunter. Drove several pickup trucks over the years, including one that people remembered, a pretty distinctive blue 1966 Dodge Fargo. Even had the license plate E. Murrah.
A distinctive truck is helpful.
Can be. Now, the key thing with the DNA, Wilmer apparently had no prior serious criminal record, nothing that would have put his DNA into the system, into CODIS, that's the national DNA database. So his DNA wasn't on file until after he died, when it was obtained and tested as part of, post-mortem procedures or maybe other investigations. It's not totally clear how they got it initially, but it shows the limits of relying only on databases of known offenders, especially in cold cases.
Right. Someone can fly under the radar for decades. It's chilling, really.
It absolutely is. It
Right.
really highlights the challenge for law enforcement when you're dealing with someone who just hasn't popped up on their radar before. And interestingly, there were accounts, reports that Wilmer was known to actually confront couples parking along the Colonial Parkway.
Really?
Yeah. There's even one specific story mentioned where he apparently mistook a man and a woman for a same-sex couple and gave them a hard time. And he also, reportedly, placed himself near the spot where Haley and Call's car was found. He was considered a person of interest, maybe even a prime suspect, in their disappearance long before this DNA hit on the Ragged Island case.
Wow. So he was on the radar, just maybe not strongly enough, or they couldn't connect the dots back then.
Seems that way, yeah.
But, okay, even with this DNA link now, identifying him as a suspect in multiple murders, You mentioned his DNA profile hasn't actually been entered into CODIS. That seems odd, like a really important step they'd want to take.
That is something that's come up in recent reporting, yeah. It seems, based on what's been said publicly, that despite the positive ID in the Knobling Edwards case and him being a very strong suspect in others, his profile maybe hasn't been formally uploaded into the national system yet, which, does seem like it could be a significant loose end, especially if you're trying to see if he connects to other unsolved cases elsewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so Wilmer is a major piece, clearly. But what about other theories? Over all those years, people must have speculated wildly. I know those Reddit threads probably go deep.
Oh, they do,
Mm.
absolutely. The rogue cop theory or someone impersonating law enforcement, that one has had legs for decades.
Right, because of the way the cars were found.
Exactly. Things like the wallets being left out, almost like you would for an ID check. The feeling that there wasn't always a huge struggle, suggesting maybe compliance at first. The way the vehicles seemed almost staged. That upright beer can in Call's car, that's a detail people who like the cop theory always bring up. Like you'd put your drink down fast if suddenly there were flashing lights,
Mm.
right?
Makes sense.
And then there's another idea that pops up that the killer was targeting people based on some kind of twisted moral judgment.
Mm-hmm.
Attacking a lesbian couple or the age difference between Knobling and Edwards,
Mhm.
or maybe perceived drug use in the Phelps-Flower case, like they were acting as some kind of vigilante.
A self-appointed judge, jury, and executioner. Creepy.
Very.
Were there other deaths around that time, other disappearances that people thought might be linked?
Yes, definitely. The sources we looked at bring up several others from that same general era that had certain, let's say, echoes or similarities.
Mm-hmm.
There were the stabbings of Mike Margaret and Donna Hall back in '84, the death of Mary Harding in '85, and interestingly, Wilmer's brother was apparently a suspect in her case.
Mm.
And Lori Powell, stabbed in '88, her body found in the James River. So there are these other cases hanging out there, but, and this is important, the Virginia State Police have been clear. Right now, there's no forensic evidence, no hard physical link connecting the Ragged Island murders, the ones tied to Wilmer, to these other Colonial Parkway cases, even though some circumstances feel similar.
So similarities, but no concrete proof they're all the same killer.
Not yet, anyway. Not forensically.
It also sounds like having so many different police agencies involved, park rangers, state police, FBI, local sheriffs might have, made things tricky.
That's often a challenge in cases like this, spanning years and different locations, multiple jurisdictions. It can sometimes lead to, let's say, hiccups in communication, coordination, how evidence is shared. It's just the nature of complex investigations sometimes.
Yeah.
And, that whole incident in 2009 when those graphic crime scene photos got leaked, used in a class by a retired FBI photographer,
Yeah.
that certainly didn't help public confidence and kind of hinted at some internal issues or lack of oversight that might have plagued the case over the years.
Not good. But efforts are ongoing now, right? They haven't given up on the other cases.
No, absolutely not.
Hmm.
The reports say the FBI has a dedicated new team, really focused on these cold cases. They're using all the latest forensic technology, trying to find new leads.
Good.
And there was also that interesting comment from a former sheriff pointing out that after Alan Wade Wilmer Sr. died in 2017, supposedly there weren't any more murders fitting the Parkway pattern. Though, as we noted, there seems to be a little confusion in different sources about the exact date and circumstances of Wilmer's death itself.
Right. So, okay, we have a name. Alan Wade Wilmer Sr., linked strongly to 2 victims, possibly 3. But the bigger picture, all those other cases, it's still frustratingly unfinished, isn't it?
It really is. The identification of Wilmer is without doubt a massive step. It could offer some level of closure, maybe,
Right.
for the families of David Knobling and Robin Edwards and Teresa Howell. But yes, so many questions about the other Colonial Parkway victims just hang there. It leaves this lasting scar, obviously for the families, but for the whole community, too.
Yeah.
These cases, these enduring cold cases, they really just highlight how complex and agonizingly slow the path to justice can be, and how critical things like DNA, genetic genealogy, all this advancing science, how vital it can be, even decades down the line.
Absolutely. This deep dive really hammers home just how haunting these mysteries are. And it makes you think, doesn't it? How different might things have been if the kind of forensic tech we have now existed back in the 80s? Would these cases have been solved sooner? And does naming Wilmer now, does that feel like an ending, or does it just crack open the door to even more questions about, the full terrifying scope of what happened along that parkway? Definitely something to chew on.